This is Emmanuel Goldstein, and I'm trying to warn you. Listen to the demands of Big Brother, as they are trying to kill you, as they are trying to kill me.
Welcome to the 1984-4 weekly podcast. In today's episode, we will focus on the traumatic effects of what you just experienced, censorship.
Censorship doesn't just exist in literature. It is real, it is alive, it's happening now. In George Orwell's 1984, he says, "Power is in tearing human minds to pieces and putting them together again in new shapes of your own choosing. This power consumes the mind of world leaders even today, such as the infamous Kim Jong-un, the treacherous Xi Jinping, and domination of the Cuban government censorship."
As previously stated, many countries throughout the world are experiencing the censorship that bears striking similarities to the censorship of Big Brother in George Orwell's 1984.
One of the countries that we just mentioned that uses censorship is North Korea. In an article by the Huffington Post, a quote says that North Korean citizens rarely have access to daily newspaper and lack adequate electricity to watch television at home. Instead, most read copies of papers posted on news boards across the city or watch TV in public areas such as Pyeongchang's main train station. This has stark contrast to 1984. In 1984, there's constant propaganda known as Hate Week, 2 Minutes Hate, and there's constant telescreen monitoring. So there's a definite comparison between North Korea and Oceania in 1984.
So we just talked about North Korea, but also in the continent of Asia, we have China, and China's leader, Xi Jinping. What he recently did was he removed a clause in their constitution, and which previously limited the amount of terms that he could have, but now he removed that, so now Xi Jinping, people are theorizing that he could be an infinite leader. This is really similar to 1984 because, as previously mentioned, there's a lot of telescreen monitoring, and that's what they're doing to prevent discussion about this change in clauses. And this change of clause can also be related to what Winston does in 1984, because he works in the Ministry of Truth, and his job is to amend history, make sure things are different from what they once were. And that's essentially what they're doing here in China as well, because they're also changing legal documents to impact the future. And this is really interesting in the specific words that China is, changing. They're censoring phrases like "I don't agree," "migration," "emigration," especially re-election, "election term," constitutional rules, constitutional amendment, and most importantly, Winnie the Pooh. Yes, China is censoring Winnie the Pooh because they are using Winnie the Pooh as a quote-unquote meme to berate Mr. Xi Jinping. Xi Jinping obviously doesn't like that, so Sina Weibo has banned users from searching Winnie the Pooh and essentially doing anything involving this character. And in addition, it all stems from the highly backed Communist Party, which is very, very similar to Big Brother's party, or the party in 1984, just one overarching, very powerful party that has a great influence over everything in that Orwellian society, and that could also be traced back to China as well.
And now we're going to hear from a U.S. spy currently stationed in Cuba. This is Ms. Shyla Seth. She is working with the U.S. government, and she is going to inform us of the censorship that is ever so prevalent in Cuba.
Jordan, Devin, Susanna, thank you very much for allowing me to join you today. It's an honor to be speaking with you guys. I really appreciate it. So, as you said, I'm stationed here in Cuba, and I've seen some pretty horrifying things. It's rather eerie and terrifying to see what's supposed to be a fictitious, this Orwellian society, this dystopia that's been created, seeing those similarities playing out here in the 21st century in the world we live in has been very, very horrifying. An example of this is here in Cuba. This young woman was this young, optimistic journalist, very excited about her new career, a recent college graduate, with the belief that she could change her country. Very excited young woman, wrote an article exposing some of the corruption here in Cuba, and was very, very censored. And it's really horrifying to see all that censorship prevailing.
Thank you, Shiloh. That is truly horrific information. But unfortunately, censorship is not just prevalent in faraway countries. It is here in our home country of the United States of America. Censorship has been prevalent here in all forms, specifically within the media, including not only television, but radio as well. As written in The Atlantic, President Trump casually and carelessly suggests infringing on constitutional protections. By analyzing this quote, we are able to infer that President Trump has shown great interest in the censorship of media, and this is a concept that is all too relevant in 1984. As previously mentioned, there are telescreens and the key slogan, Big Brother is always watching. This slogan it demonstrates the fear of censorship and the prevalence of censorship in this Orwellian society that is so prevalent in 1984. So as we can see, this dystopian novel is starting to bear a striking resemblance to the country we live in today. As Winston Smith stated, that rigorous censorship requires someone who has a sort of athleticism of mind, an ability at one moment to make the most delicate use of logic, and at the next to be unconscious of the crudest logical errors. Stupidity is as necessary as intelligence, and as difficult to attain. It is very sad to see that quotes from this dystopian novel written during World War II are becoming relevant today as we see censorship in many of the world's most powerful countries and leaders. So, we hope you understand the importance of censorship and the relevance of censorship even in today. Thank you for tuning in to the 1984 podcast. Stay safe.